Chapter 1. The Villisca Axe Murders. A House of Shadows. Introduction. It was a quiet night in the small town of Villisca, Iowa. The year was 1912, before the age of DNA, before sophisticated crime scene investigations. This was a time when small-town America felt safe. Doors were left unlocked, neighbors trusted one another, and the darkness held no fear. But on the night of June 9, 1912, something changed in Villisca. A monstrous evil crept into a family home, an evil so brutal, so inexplicable, that over a century later, we still don't know who did it. What happened in that house remains one of the most horrifying unsolved murder cases in American history, the Villisca Axe Murders. The crime scene, a nightmare discovered. The Moore family was well known in Villisca. Josiah and Sarah Moore, along with their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, lived a simple, happy life. On the evening of June 9th, the family attended a church event, accompanied by 2 neighbor girls, Lena and Ina Stillinger. When the event ended, the Moores invited the Stillinger sisters to spend the night at their home. It was supposed to be a night of innocent fun. But sometime after midnight, an intruder entered the house. The next morning, concern grew when the Moore family didn't emerge. A concerned neighbor, Mary Peckham, knocked on the door. No answer. The silence was unnatural. By noon, the town marshal was summoned. What he found inside the house sent shockwaves through the entire town. Blood everywhere. The family, along with the Stillinger sisters, had been butchered in their sleep. Each victim was bludgeoned with an axe, their heads struck so violently that skulls were shattered. Blood splattered the walls, the ceiling. But the most chilling part? The killer covered every mirror in the house with cloth. Whoever committed these murders did not want to see their own reflection. Clues that led nowhere. The crime scene was disturbing for more than just the brutality. The murderer had stayed in the house for hours after the killings. A bowl of bloody water sat in the kitchen, suggesting the killer washed up before leaving. There was also a plate of food left uneaten, as if he had taken his time. The axe, belonging to Josiah Moore, was found leaning against a wall. A kerosene lamp had been placed on the floor, the chimney removed, perhaps to prevent a sudden burst of light from alerting neighbors. Footprints led away from the home, but they vanished into the dirt road outside. There were no signs of forced entry. The killer either entered through an unlocked door or was already inside. Theories and suspects. Who could have done it? Over the years, many suspects were considered. Some were drifters, some were local, but none were ever convicted. Suspect number 1, Reverend George Kelly, the obsessed preacher. One of the most infamous suspects was Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who had attended the same church event as the Moores that night. Kelly was known to be strange, obsessed with young girls. He left town early the next morning and later sent bizarre letters about the crime. Years later, he even confessed to the murders, before retracting his confession. Was he truly guilty? Or just a mentally unstable man seeking attention? Suspect number 2, a possible serial killer? Some believe the Villisca Axe Murders were the work of a serial killer. Similar axe murders had been reported across the country, including in Colorado and Kansas. Could this have been the work of the same deranged murderer, riding the railways and striking in the dead of night? Suspect number 3, a personal revenge? Josiah Moore had made enemies. He once worked for a wealthy businessman named Frank Jones, but later left to start his own company. Jones reportedly despised Moore. Was this a case of revenge? Some believed Jones hired a hitman named William Mansfield, but there was never enough evidence to prove it. Why the case remains unsolved. Despite extensive investigations, the case remains a mystery. The killer vanished into the night, leaving behind a house full of horrors and no clear answers. The town of Villisca never recovered from the fear. To this day, the home still stands, preserved as a ghostly reminder of the crime. Visitors report eerie whispers, doors slamming on their own, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Some claim the spirits of the Moore family remain, forever trapped in the place where their lives were brutally stolen. A century has passed, but one question still lingers in the dark corners of that house. Who took an axe to the Moore family? And why? No one knows. And perhaps no one ever will.